Hello, welcome to the Greg Larson Show. If you like this show, if you listen to this show more than once, maybe get on my Patreon, Greg Larson at Patreon. It's in my Instagram, the link in bio. And you don't have to hear me at the start of every episode go, please come onto my Patreon. And you don't have to also hear the fucking ads on it because there's ads on this show. Just please come onto the Patreon and you come on there.
The Greg Larson Show. The big unit is ready to go. The Greg Larson Show. Muck around on the Mazapan. A fresh custard in his hand. The greatest podcast in all the land. Greg Larson Show. Yeah. Great, just what we need, another podcast show.
It's the Greg Larson Show. We're back on our bullshit.
Suck my dick.
We're back, baby. Thanks to the team, Mr. Jimbles. Mr. Jimbles is giving me a wave. He's in the box. G'day, Mr. Jimbles, on the sound effects. This episode is called "I'm Not an Extremist, I'm Just Upset." Now, I want to talk a little bit about sociology. All right, I want to talk a little bit about sociology. Do you know about sociology? Do you know about philosophy? Do you know about critical discourse analysis? Do you know about the Foucauldian postmodernist analysis of power structures?
Yum, 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 yum.
I have a little bit of a knowledge of sociology. That was what I studied at university, and German. I've forgotten all the German. I still remember some of the sociology. I want to talk about, there's a sociologist who has a sociologist slash philosopher called Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault. He was a Frenchman, a dirty, dirty Frenchman. They are dirty. They piss everywhere. Actually, this is a side note. There's a really cool video you can look up of like these protests in Paris because they love a protest. I love the French so much. And then there's these dudes that piss in like a little, I guess like against a wall. And then this old bloke has left a cup there. You know, people are going to piss just because they need to piss somewhere and they're all protesting. And then this bloke has left a cup there and then he runs over and when no one's looking, he drinks the piss. And, you know, there's just all sorts out there. I guess that's what I'm saying. There's all sorts out there, you know, and good luck on you and your journey, you know, whatever that may be. But there's a sociologist slash philosopher called Michel Foucault, right? And he's a bit of a Brian Cox slash Neil deGrasse Junior High. Like he's the sociology version of one of them in that serious sociologists and historians will be like, oh, Michel Foucault, that's kind of kid stuff. And like first year university students who have like a first year knowledge of sociology will be like, oh, Michel Foucault, that's like really advanced. But yeah, I want to talk about him because I have that first year university knowledge. And the second year and the third, I have a 5 year unit, but like not 5 years in that. I did a 5 year degree, 5 years in that. You know, you muck around and maybe you fail a subject and you got to do it again. But Michel Foucault came up with this idea, and this is what I want to talk about briefly. Right, he came up with this idea called the panopticon. That sounds quite futuristic. I don't know if I have a futuristic. In the future. Oh, wait, I can definitely do, it'll just give me 1 second. I can definitely do a a robot voice. How do you do a robot voice? There's a way to do it on here. I don't know if I can do it while I'm currently. Oh no, I can definitely do it. Okay.
Just listen, wait.
Okay. Wait. Okay, I've got it. No.
Welcome to the future. Welcome to the future. We're talking about the Panopticon, it's the future. We're talking about the Panopticon, it's the future. The Panopticon, the Decepticons, robots. So, the fuck, how do you get it?
Okay. So the Panopticon is this idea, a theory that Michel Foucault had, right? Where I'm really, really, really simplifying it here. But there was some Italian cunt, I forget who, came up with this idea for a prison called a panopticon. And I don't know if you've ever seen a TV series called Silo, quite a futuristic sci-fi. Silo.
Welcome to the Silo. Yeah, we are in the future.
So Silo is literally if you've seen Silo, the Panopticon prison looks like that. It's this giant tube where prisoners live, and they live on the outsides, the inside walls around the outside of this tube, this cylinder, if you will. And in the middle of the tube is like the guard tower where so the guards have a 360-degree view and they can see all the prison cells at any given point, right? At any given point, they can look and go, I can see this cell, I can see this cell. So the prisoners have zero privacy. At any given point, they could be watched, and they don't know whether they're being watched because they can't see in the guard towers, but they know at any given point they can be watched. And Foucault said that this was a perfect metaphor for the model in which power and power structures are exercised in, modern societies, right? Where, and this is his point, oppressed people, subjugated people, if the power structure exists in a certain way, then oppressed people and subjugated people will actively and unknowingly participate in their own subjugation. They will, on a daily basis, reinforce the power structure that led to their subjugation, whether they know it or not, right? And it's, I guess, covert. It's subconscious. It's not the same as power being exercised with the barrel of a gun. If I point a gun at your head and say, do this, that's just force. The Panopticon is a structure that exists, a power structure that exists that is so, I guess, well set up that you modify your own behavior, you moderate your own behavior. I just said it again. But you will do it, I guess, at least on the surface level, thinking that it's your own free will, right? So in the Panopticon, literally, prisoners don't know if they're being watched or not. They know that the guard tower can see them at any given point, so they're sort of on their best behavior because they don't know if they're being watched. The guards don't need to threaten them. They just know that there's this ever-present thing. And a lot of people assume the Panopticon, when Michel Foucault is talking about it, he's talking about the surveillance state and a literal, system by which you are watched at all given points. And that's not necessarily the case. What he's talking about is you modifying your own behavior or doing things, within a power structure that actually help that power structure. I'll explain what I mean in a second. Okay, I'll explain what I mean. There's another sociologist called Norman Fairclough, and if you are a really high-level intellect, you'll love this book. It's called Language and Power. It's just such a wonderful book. It talks about, the nature of discourse and how discourse itself is a way of enacting power and creating and enforcing social norms. It sort of takes the Foucauldian postmodern perspective, and he invents a line of sociological inquiry called critical discourse analysis. All right, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Is this fucking boring? It's I don't even know if this needs this much explanation, but I'm doing it anyway. It gets better. This episode, I say that not knowing, but we'll find out. But this guy Norman Fairclough, he wrote this book called Language and Power. He talked about how language is used and discourse is used to replicate and enforce power structures. Let me give you a basic example of what I mean, right? And I'm going to use like a sort of made up example because I don't want to get into, actual, I don't want to get into the weeds of what I'm talking about. So this is a hypothetical, magical scenario. Imagine we lived in a world in which the privileged group, the top tier of, society were people that could do a self-suck. Yeah. And now I will explain what I mean when I say a self-suck. A self-suck is basically if someone can, lean over, fold themselves in half and suck their own dick. But, traditionally you would say dick, but isn't that quite patriarchal? To say, a self-suck, it means a dick. It could be a pussy. So let's just assume that self-suck in this context is anyone that can wrap their mouth around their own genitals and give it a good old suck, right? Let's say we live in a world in which those in power were all self-suckers. To them, the height of humanity was a self-suck, was being able to self-suck. And they had a word, people that sucked each other off, that licked out and sucked off each other. Their word for them were like couple suckers. Well, yeah, you get into a couple, it's dirty. It's two people doing it. Ugh. You should be pure. You should self-suck. That's the champion's way. Whereas you're out there with other people, you can't do it yourself. It's weak. And they had created this dichotomy where there's two kinds of people in the world. There's self-suckers and there's couple suckers, right? Imagine this world. Now, imagine this world where the people who love to do a 69, who loved to suck on each other's peens and puss. Imagine this world where they were like, you know what? Nah, man, we reckon couple sucking's good, and they were like, we want a couple suck. We're proud of couple sucking. Couple suckers are fucking sick, and they were like, self suckers, fuck you, right? Like. The thing is, what someone who, like a Foucauldian or someone who had read the works of Norman Fairclough might say, is by participating in the premise that a self-sucker and a couple sucker are two different things, you are unwillingly enforcing the traditional power structure, right? Because there's a premise here. The self-suckers who are up there sucking their own dicks in their ivory towers, they believe that self-suckers are superior to the people who are running around doing 69s. They believe they are superior. And they believe that because they believe they are fundamentally different. They are a different people. They are a different species. They're more advanced. Right. And by saying, oh no, you couple suckers, we're actually all right. We're cool. Like we're happy with it. Like, we want a fucking 69, dude. Like, and self suckers, you're fucked. You're actually still buying through language and through discourse. You're upholding the premise that people who 69 and people who suck their own dicks are fundamentally different. When it's arbitrary, it's an arbitrary distinction. Like it's like wearing a yellow t-shirt and a red t-shirt, or like, do you like playing Gran Turismo or Mario Kart? Like, if you think these things don't matter, if you think it doesn't matter if you suck your own dick or puss, then don't play into their hands by still upholding the same language that they use. By using the same language that the self-sucking ivory tower people use, you are actively participating in the false premise they have created, which is that the self-suckers and the couple suckers are fundamentally different, right? Like there's another way you can do it, right? And this is, because this is the thing, this is what debaters do. people who are debaters, right? And there's a difference between someone like debating is a skill. Debating, like, your Ben Shapiro's of the world. These aren't people who are, have valid arguments. These are people who are good at debating and twisting words and setting up false premises, right? And a false premise is a great way to control people through language and through power and through discourse. Perfect example, right? Another example. There's, again, like a hypothetical thing. Let's say someone were to say a simple sentence. You're having a debate. You're on Q&A. You're up there on Q&A. You got Tony Jones or whoever's instead of Tony Jones now.
I reckon that's pretty fucking funny, dude.
You got like whoever is up there. I will get new sounds. I swear to God. You're up there doing your Q&A. You're having a little debate. And someone goes, someone who's into the whole, self-suck community says, I think, the best way, obviously, to suck your own dick is to have your bottom two ribs removed. Right. And now that's a statement. And there's a million ways you can break that down. Right. That the first is like, you're saying a statement of fact. Well, you're not if you're saying I believe. But if someone says the best way to suck your own dick is to have your bottom two ribs removed, that's a statement of fact when it's not necessarily true. Like, because you could argue, oh, no, but that's not true. It's all about flexibility. It's about like, the girth of your tum-tum. There's a lot of factors. It's actually not the ribs. Like the ribs, like you can have your ribs removed and still not be able to do a self-suck, or you can not have your ribs removed, But at the end of the day, if you engage with that premise, if you engage with that and argue that, oh no, there's a better way of sucking your own dick, and that's not having your bottom two ribs removed, you're accepting the premise. You're accepting the premise, right? And the premise being that's sort of coded into the language is, if you say the best way to suck your own dick is to have your bottom two ribs removed, you are presupposing that sucking your own dick is the obvious desirable outcome that everyone wants, when that might not necessarily be true. That's, again, you're presupposing the premise. And by engaging with that, you're accepting the premise that, yeah, obviously we all want to suck our own dicks, but, like, I'm not saying that. And you might be like, oh yeah, but like you got to have a big dick, or you got to be like flexible, and you having your ribs removed doesn't matter. And Marilyn Manson didn't have his bottom two ribs removed. And then someone's like, I heard it was Prince that had his bottom two ribs removed. And you're like, no, it was the kid from the Wonder Years, not the main one, but his friend. And then someone said Marilyn Manson is the kid from the Wonder Years. And then you're like, no, he's not. He's not. You can look it up, man. That's what I'm saying. Like if you can create a false premise in a statement. Like another example, like an actual real world example would be if someone were to say, on Q&A, the best way to achieve economic growth is through capitalism. You could argue till you're blue in the face about what the best way to achieve economic growth is. But if you argue with that question, you're accepting the premise that economic growth is necessarily the main goal, and it might not be the main goal. There's times in which economic growth is a bad thing, whether, or an irrelevant thing. If there's economic inequality, who cares if there's growth? Or if the growth is too rapid, it can lead to bad consequences and all the rest of it, right? But if you say, like, if you were a capitalist who's supporting capitalism, you would make a statement like, the best way to achieve economic growth is through capitalism. And then if you turn around and say, oh, well, in socialism, you can actually achieve great economic growth, then you've already fallen into their trap because you've accepted the premise. And, they are promoting capitalism. So therefore, they're going to go for like the best way. Yeah, economic growth and capitalism are two things that happen. It's like saying the best way to get citrus is to eat an orange, and then go, oh, well, I think an apple is actually a better way of getting citrus. Well, it isn't, but you don't necessarily know if you want citrus. Does that make sense? Does that make fucking sense?
It's the Greg Larson Show. Fucking watch it now. Hey, it's the Greg Larson Show. You fucking dogs.
There was a guy on the internet I don't know what his name was, like the ponytail Reddit guy. And like that someone was making some shit TikTok video where they walked up to him and they said, what's more important to you? You like trans rights or economic stability? And he said both. The guy's like, that's not the question. Like the question is what's more important. He's like, we can have both. And he's like, no, but the question is, anyway, this guy with the ponytail, God, legend. What a legend. Hope someone gave him a little kiss after that, because that is a guy that understands how language can be used to control. He didn't accept the premise, right? He's asked this false dichotomy. Like there's this false dichotomy where it's like, either you want economic growth or you want trans rights. And those two things have nothing to do with each other. I don't know if any of this is making sense. I'm not very good at explaining things, which is a shame because I'm doing this podcast. That's a real shame. But I guess this is a long-winded way of saying the political compass and the left versus right dichotomy, and talking about the political compass and talking about left wing and right wing is fucking bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit, right? This is how the neoliberals, neoconservatives, the people that are in charge in America, in Australia, in the UK, in like most developed nations on earth, the neoliberal conservatives, this is how they maintain power, right? The political compass. It's just a simple little thing. It's a simple little thing, a simple little trick of language, a simple little trick of discourse that allows them to essentially put forward their ideology as the only sane, rational ideology. I'm going to explain this in detail. The political compass is bullshit, right? If I do one of those political compass things, you go into, there's an ABC political compass. There's the political compass websites where you answer questionnaires, and then a little dot will come up and there'll be a grid, and it will have like an x-axis and a y-axis, and it will say your authoritarian right wing or your libertarian left wing, or there's all these different definitions and terms and like where you sit on the graph. And its most simplest form is literally just a line, like a straight line, and you've got left wing on one side and you've got right wing on the other side, right? This is a bullshit tool of language and discourse that tricks you into thinking that that privileges a certain political position, and that is the quote unquote, I'm using air quotes here, the rational centrist, the considered moderate, the Anthony Albanese, Peter Dutton, Scott Morrison, George W. Bush, Kamala Harris, Trump, Obama, fucking Paul Keating, them lot. All of them, right? Some of those are better than others. I'm not saying they're all as bad as each other. Fuck off. But I'm saying they're all in that spectrum of actually, no, I said Trump. Fuck that. He's actually full on right wing. I don't know why I said that in that thing. He's hardcore dictator, also a fucking dipshit idiot. That's a whole other thing. But what I'm saying is this, right? When you have a left-right political spectrum, and you have the left wing and the right wing, it seems rational, and it is put forward as though it's rational, that either end of the political spectrum is extreme. That if you have the left wing on one hand all the way down the end of the line, and then all the way down the other end of the line, you've got right wing. It makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense that in the middle would be okay, well, I'm not going all in on one side and all in on the other side. I'm making a measured decision. I'm rational. I'm thinking about things. I've weighed up things, right? But here's the issue, right? The political compass in and of itself is bullshit. The left wing, right wing, up, down, X, Y axis, whatever, it is a way for us to quantify an unquantifiable thing. We invent systems and structures and ways of measuring things. We invent ways of measuring things. We invented maths. We invented the concept of maths. If you're American, we invented the concept of math, and we eat ass. That's actually good to eat ass. But what was I talking about? Yeah. So what was I talking about? Political compass, maths, and it is maths. In maths, we invented numbers, right? And you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's more than that. There's at least 7 more. I'm not sure how many more, but there's at least 7. But we invented numbers, and the way and the order in which those numbers are positioned has meaning, right? 2 comes after 1 because 2 is more than 1. It's 1 greater, and 1 greater than that is 3. What I'm saying is there's a reason why 2 comes after 1. There's a reason why 5 comes after 4. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail. It's just maths. It's that's how the system works, right? The alphabet, on the other hand, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I know it. I know the whole thing off by heart, cunt. The alphabet, on the other hand, is arbitrary. There's no reason why B comes after A other than that's just how it was. And it's fine. And it doesn't matter because, we don't prioritize certain letters of the alphabet, or even if we did, who gives a shit? What does it matter if Z doesn't get used very much? Who cares? It's totally arbitrary. The alphabet could start with S and end with X. It doesn't have to be in that order. It just is in that order. And that's the thing. But with the alphabet, it doesn't matter. With politics, it does matter. Different political opinions aren't measurable on a scale. There isn't a scale where on one side this political opinion is, and then on the other side this political opinion is. There's no measurement. There's no actual scale that makes sense. The political spectrum that we invented is just because we love putting things in charts. We're obsessed with putting things in charts. We're obsessed with measuring things and going, how many is this and what number is that? We love to chart things up and measure things up. The political spectrum is totally arbitrary. It's just different political opinions. A neoclassical liberal political opinion, a communist political opinion, a fascist political opinion. These are all political opinions, right? And they're not measurable. They're not, you can't say, this one is 2 greater than this one. You take -6 and then you get this political opinion, and add 4 and you get this political opinion. They're just different opinions, and some of those opinions are valid and other of those opinions are dumb. Some are dumb. And when you set up a left-right political spectrum where left-wing is at one side and at right-wing is the other side, it can make sense, and it can seem to make sense that one is extreme, another one's extreme, and then, in the middle you've got, okay, now we've got a moderate considered opinion. But that's just an invention. There's no such thing as an extreme political opinion. There's only political opinions, economic opinions that are valid or not valid, or have merit or don't have merit, or that are useful or are not useful, depending on your goals, depending on the time frame, depending on what's going on in the world, right? It would be a crazy political opinion, in this day and age, to say, we should make sure that we should bring back the Roman Empire. That's a useless, dumb political opinion. But, at the time of the Roman Empire, it probably wasn't so crazy to be hey, the Roman Empire is pretty good. Political opinions are not measurable. They're not measurable in the way that we measure maths, and the way that we measure, weights and temperatures and all the rest of it. I'm going to get more into this in a second, but we do have to go to a couple of ads. So just bear with me. Melbourne Homes, Australia's premier building company, where you can get a dark grey brick home with a lighter shade of grey for the concrete pillars, and it's shit. Are you looking for a home with dark grey siding and a dark grey brick face with a light grey pillar in the front and it's shit and the door handle falls off? Then come to a Melbourne Homes showroom where we will show you a home with grey brick and other shades of grey that we will build illegally and the door handles fall off. Tired of living in a home that has things like wood, character and door handles that don't fall off? Then get a Melbourne Home. It's 6 different shades of grey and the door handle falls off and the toilet cannot be flushed because it's shit. The toilet can't be flushed because any amount of paper will cause it to clog because we designed it really badly, and also the pipes leak in the walls, but the black mould is not noticeable because of the grey and the door handles fall off and the tap handles fall off. Melbourne Homes. We are a shell company that pays massive bribes to the Liberal and Labor parties to build just the absolute worst dog shit you've ever seen. And we're trying to get legislation passed that makes it legal to make homes out of actual dog shit. And the legislation will also say that you have to suck our dicks off. Melbourne Homes. Different grey bricks and handles falling off and suck our dicks. There's literally nothing you can do to stop us, you worthless dogs. Melbourne. Building Australian families. You're a dumb cunt and you'll buy it.
Come on down to peterduttonfuck.com, where you can call our service to have a man who looks exactly like Peter Dutton come and fuck you in the arse with a very strange dick. We have over 2,000 men who look exactly like Peter Dutton, and each and every single one of them has the weirdest and most deformed dick you've ever seen, and they are all ready to fuck you in the arse. PeterDuttonFuck.com is the only website where you can be fucked in the arse by a man who looks identical to Peter Dutton. Avoid the imitators and only use the official PeterDuttonFuck.com app and get fucked in the arse by a man who looks exactly like Peter Dutton today. This is not a political website. We are not making a comment about politics or Peter Dutton. This is simply a place for people who like weird dicks and men who look identical to Peter Dutton and want to have that weird dicked Peter Dutton lookalike fuck them in the ass. It costs $20,000. It's not cheap, but where else can you order a man who looks exactly like Peter Dutton to fuck you directly in the ass with his crooked, chopped up dick? Nowhere else. Nowhere but PeterDuttonFuck.com. PeterDuttonFuck.com. Get fucked in the ass today.
Welcome back to the Greg Larson Show. My name is Greg Larson. The political spectrum, right? The political compass is a tool of oppression. Centrists and moderates are fuckheads. They are fuckheads, and they like to paint this idea that they are the only ones who are. Well, they use the term centrist. They use the term moderate. Those terms imply rationality. They imply that they are the smart ones. You know, again, we're going back to this political compass. You can't just take arbitrary things and put them on a scale and just say, you know, this is the scale. On one end of the scale, we've got pizza. On the other end of the scale, we've got the concept of sportsmanship. You know, like imagine this, right? Imagine that you wanted to have dinner. You wanted to have dinner. There's a few of you around. There's 3 of you around. You're going, well, we're going to have dinner. What are we going to have? Right? Now, there's different opinions about what you can have for dinner. Some of those opinions are good. Some of them are bad. Some of them are dumb. Some of them are well considered. But imagine this. Imagine that one person says, I want to have pizza for dinner. That's what I want to have for dinner. I want to have a pizza. Now, there's a lot of critiques you could have over that choice. You know, pizza's not the healthiest dinner option in the whole world, is it?
It's not. You can't just have pizza every night, can you? You can't just have a bloody pizza. You're sitting there having a pizza. What about a bit of salad? A lot of cheese on that pizza. A lot of bread on that pizza. It's not necessarily the most healthy option, but it's a food. It's a dinner. It's something, right? That's an opinion. It's a valid opinion. Maybe health isn't it. Maybe you've been eating really, really healthy for weeks now, and it's okay to have a little bit of a pizza, a little bit of a treat, a little bit of a treaty, a little bit of a treat. Maybe it isn't. Maybe you've been eating pizza every day. But imagine now, person A says, I want to have some pizza. That's what I want to have for dinner. And person B says, you know what I want to have for dinner? I want to have crushed up glass mixed with anthrax. Now, that's not a bloody dinner, is it? That's not a bloody dinner. It's not a food. It's not nutritious. It's not going to sustain you. In fact, I would wager, I will say this. I will go so far as to say this. And I do want to get serious here. I think that eating crushed up glass and anthrax will be very detrimental to your health. And I don't care who knows it, but I believe that and I will say it. Right? If someone says I want to eat crushed up glass and anthrax for dinner, that's not a valid opinion. That's not an opinion that you can even debate rationally. That's just psychotic. That's psychotic. It's not a food. It'll kill you. You will die. You will die. You will be dead. You will be dead. It is the craziest thing. And then, so person A has said, I want pizza for dinner. Person B says, I want crushed up glass and anthrax for dinner. Imagine person C. Imagine the absolute smooth brain drooling idiot that person C would have to be to say, well, you know what? I'm a rational centrist. On one end of the spectrum, we have the extreme end of the spectrum. We have pizza. On the other extreme end of the spectrum, we have the end of we have crushed up glass and anthrax. Both extreme ends of the spectrum. I think that the best approach is to consider all the options and compromise and sort of understand that extremes on either side in some ways are just as bad as each other. And I think that for dinner we should have a pizza sprinkled with crushed up glass and anthrax. That is a dumb fuck thing to say. And that's what I mean when I say the political compass is bad. It's by referring to yourself as left wing or right wing or like whatever. And I do all the time. I always say I'm a dirty lefty and all that. But we are buying into this idea that the center is somehow, where the sanity is. That if you have these arbitrary spectrums where your political belief is on the edge of the spectrum and this other person's political belief is on the other edge of the spectrum, you're on the edge. You're on the edge of society. You're on the edge of ideology. But these are just arbitrary distinctions. You could put communism in the center and liberal democracy in the top right hand corner and fascism in the bottom left hand corner. It doesn't matter. These are just things. These are things we believe, right? And there's things we believe that people believe that hold merit, and there's things that people believe that hold no merit. Universal healthcare. That's an idea that holds some merit. There's merit to that. There's merit to the idea that tax should exist in some form. There's pros and cons. There's merit to a lot of ideas. There's no merit to the idea, for example, that Trump's tariffs will lower the cost of living. I think that's an example of an idea that has no merit. There's no, it's not true. It's just a factually incorrect thing to say. And this is what I mean, right? If you have opinions
if you have opinions about things, and politics are opinions, like some of those opinions are based on fact, some of those are based on just pure opinion. You know, there's no right or wrong answer when it's like I prefer apples to oranges. There is a right or wrong answer where it's like what's more healthier, an apple or an ice cream. But then there is a right and wrong answer when you say what's better for you, or like what would you prefer to eat, an apple or crushed up glass and anthrax? Like there's one opinion is fucking dumb. And that's the thing about like politics, right? And the reason that, these rational, conservatives, rational moderates, considered opinions are all a bunch of fucking bullshit is that they position us, say lefties, right? They position us on one end of a spectrum, and a spectrum they just invented and made up. They just go, oh yeah, there's a spectrum. You're on the edge of it. On the other edge of it is, fascists and Nazis, right? And in a lot of ways, you're actually just as bad as each other. And that's bullshit. That's bullshit. One political opinion has merit, the other one doesn't, right? And that's the thing about conservatives, whether you're a little bit conservative or you're ultra conservative, whether you're not, whether you're Hitler or whether you're, George W. Bush, your opinions have little to no merit. That's what conservatism, fascism, these things are dumb. These are dumb things to believe. They are not evidence-based. They are not factually based. Like conservatives are the ones that often go like, facts don't care about your feelings. It's like, yeah, that's the only thing you've said that's correct. Facts don't care about your feelings. They believe in dumb shit. Like they have dumb opinions. They believe that universal healthcare is bad. It's not. It's proven to be a more cost-effective way, like from a cost perspective, from a public health perspective, from a life expectancy perspective, from any way you slice it, any measurable thing, universal healthcare is more effective than having a privatized healthcare system. It costs less to run. It's more efficient. It's easier to navigate. Their opinion that universal healthcare is bad is wrong. It's just wrong. There's no justification for it. They thought if we legalize gay marriage, we'll be legalizing pedophiles and dog marriage. And none of those things have happened because they were just wrong. They were wrong about it. They were wrong about when they were like, what if we give black people the right to vote? Then bad things are going to happen. They were wrong. They were wrong that women were stupider than men. They were like, no, women can't vote. They were wrong. At every single point in history, they're wrong and stupid. And we keep saying, oh, no, there's a valid opinion. It's not a valid opinion. It's just there are dumb fucks in the world. And I'm not saying there's plenty of lefties. Hey.
I reckon that.
There are plenty of lefties in the world who are dumb as fuck. There are not all dumb people are conservatives. Not all bad people are conservatives, but all conservatives are dumb and bad. And you might be saying, hang on a second. You can't just use that brush. Well, I did, and fuck you. Because their opinions, I can't wrap my head around it, right? Like, on one hand, they're not all dumb and bad. Come on. That's a bit of a joke. But if you have a bad opinion, like if you think, black people aren't as good as white people, that's bad. Like you're bad. You're bad in your heart. And if you think, climate change is like overblown or wrong or not non-existent, you're bad and wrong. You're factually wrong. Like it doesn't matter what your facts don't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter that you're like, oh yeah, but we got to keep the lights on, blah, blah. Yeah, cool. It's an existential crisis that all of the world scientists agree is definitely going to kill us. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the human race. And, all the experts are in total agreement on that. And you're like, yeah, but what if it's not real? Like that's just a wrong opinion to have. And it's dumb to say, oh, well, on one end of the political spectrum, you have people that acknowledge that the science is correct. And on the other hand of the spectrum, you have people that say, no, it's not. And as a rational centrist, I think let's keep burning fossil fuels at a higher and higher rate, but at a slightly less higher rate than we would have if we hadn't stopped increasing the rate as much. To give you an analogy, it would be like if a quote unquote left-wing person, say you were diagnosed with lung cancer, you're a pack-a-day smoker, you're diagnosed with lung cancer, right? And the doctor community, the scientific community said, hey, you got lung cancer. Good news is it's treatable. We can do surgery. We can do chemo. Here's the 3 things you got to do. You got to do the surgery. You got to do the chemo, and you got to quit smoking. You got to do those 3 things. And then we think you can live. We think we can make a big boy better. We can make a big boy better. And you got the quote unquote lefty on one end of the political spectrum going, okay, cool. Like I'll listen to that opinion. Like you say I need the chemo, you say I need the surgery. I've asked 6 doctors, they've all said the same thing, except one doctor who was actually a doctor of philosophy, and his name was this is a metaphor for like Jordan Peterson, and I don't know where I'm going with it. Oh, I love lobster. You ask a bunch of doctors and they all say, yeah, you get the surgery, quit smoking, and you go, okay, cool. And then you have, your quote unquote, fascist, alt-right, hard right, whatever you want to call it. Your cooker, your Trump voter, your whatever, one of them ones. On the other side going, oh yeah, but cancer's not real. It was created by Bill Gates in a lab, and smoking actually improves your health, and smoking actually cures cancer. And also when you get surgery, they'll put an alien in your brain. And then imagine you have a rational centrist, a rational centrist who goes, okay, well, you're both pretty extreme here. We don't just want to, in a lot of ways, killing cancer is just as bad as, killing doctors, nobody should kill anybody, if anything. And look, hey, yeah, you could quit smoking, but think about the economic impacts as well. Of quitting smoking, the economic impacts of taking time off work to get the chemo and the surgery. How about we do this? We take a measured approach. We weigh up the fact that obviously this is bad with the economy and all the rest of it, and we say we will reduce smoking. So we keep spending the money on the cigarettes. So the local guy who owns the corner shop, he can still get that money, but we reduce smoking. By 2050, we will have reduced our smoking by 10% as a measure of the rate smoking was increasing. So we will be smoking more cigarettes by then, but it will not be as many as we would have if current trends continued. So we will reduce our increase in cigarette smoking by 2050, and we will get some of the surgery. We'll remove half the tumor because that's an easier surgery, and we don't want to spend too much time off work. And we won't get the chemo, but we will get like a boost juice with a vitamin C bomb in it. That vitamin C bomb, that will be absolutely the most packed full of vitamin C. And we're really going to get it. We're really going to get it done. And these lefties who are sitting there going, no, that's not good enough. Well, you're just, it's something. We're out here trying to do something. And while you're complaining and saying it doesn't go far enough and stuff, well, we're doing something. We're getting something done here with the boost juice and the cigarettes and the cutting out half the tumor. We're doing something. No, you have one political opinion that's insane, one political opinion that's just wrong and ineffective, and one political opinion that's correct. One is not extreme and other one's not extreme. Like they're just a bad one and a good one, and then just a dumb one. It's just 3 different political opinions. They're dumb. Conservatives are dumb. They believe dumb things. They think that gay marriage was going to kill us all. They think trickle down economics. They think they thought that worked, doesn't. They think climate change is wrong. It is. It isn't.
And also, it's not climate change, it's global warming. That's another way language controls you. They changed it. They changed it from global warming to climate change because they were like, oh, change, because it sounds better, because it makes it seem more like it's not global warming. It's just change. Change is good in some ways. A butterfly coming out of the thing. You know, they defended Cardinal Pell. They defended Alan. We all knew Alan Jones was a fucking sex pest. Everyone knew Alan Jones was a sex pest. You know, it was the most open secret in the media. 100% of people knew. Nobody gave a shit. That's a whole other thing. But, you know, like conservatives, they just pretend things, you know, they're factually wrong. You know, they go, oh, you know, Peter Dutton doesn't kill little animals for sexual pleasure. You know, like he does, like obviously. I don't know. I mean, like you take a look at like the extreme left and the extreme right. You take a look at Nazis versus communists. All right? Take a look at Nazis versus communists. The extreme left, the extreme right. The extreme left, the extreme right. You could swap them. It could be the up and the down. It could be up and down. It could be north and south. It could be east and west. Like. And like left versus right, left could be right, right could be left. It could be northwest. These are arbitrary made up things. Karl Marx, extreme left. He said that within capitalism, the capitalists, the people who owned all the factories, they would get more and more and more of the money, more and more and more of the money until the working class people couldn't survive, you know, on what they were making, and that, you know, eventually there would be. Karl Marx was as much a philosopher and a historian as he was, you know, I don't want to say the word activist, but like he was describing what he believed would happen, not just what he believed should happen. Right? He believed that, you know, based on economics, that the wealth gap would get wider and wider. He believed that workers were being and will continue to be alienated from the value of their labor, so that a worker who produced $100 worth of goods would only receive, you know, 50 cents in payment. Therefore, the $99.50 of what this worker produced went to someone else, you know, i.e. their boss. Karl Marx, you know, talked about the history of, you know, feudalism leading to capitalism, and which he believed would lead to socialism, which would lead to communism, right? He talked about like each of these economic structures and how baked in their own destruction was. You know, he talked about the fact that he believed capitalism was in fact a necessary evil on the step towards socialism. He believed capitalism was a requirement for societal progress, and that capitalism needed to be and would eventually be dismantled in favor of the socialist system. You know, whether that's peaceful or violent or whatever, he had all these beliefs, and these beliefs were backed up in his sound economic theories. And, you know, I mean, like there's a big body of work, and regardless of whether or not you agree with Marx, there was validity to the things he said. There was validity to the analyses he made, you know, and to this day, Marx's theories will be taught, you know, for better or worse in economic classes and in sociology classes and stuff, you know, because they are valid to at least learn about, right? And there are plenty of economists who would say, oh, I'm not a socialist, and I don't agree with everything Marx said, but he had a valid point about this or that, or, you know, whatever, right? There's validity enough at the very least that these things are taught and discussed. Whereas on the right-hand side, on the extreme right, you had people that believed if your skull had a certain shape, you had yuck blood and, you know, you were a criminal. That if you had a certain shaped skull, you'd go, and you couldn't understand anything and you'd just bash people. And then so you had to be killed. And that's dumb. And that's dumb. And they're not just as bad as each other. The right-wing nut jobs are nut jobs. They're not, but like there's no serious, you know, extreme right, quote unquote, extreme right philosophers or thinkers or anything that is taught in any way. There's no, the things that the Nazis believed were debunked completely and utterly.
There were things that communists and socialists have done that were fucking terrible. But the things they believed were, had validity. That, the fact that we now have a greater disparity, the rich and the poor, it's getting extreme. That's what's getting extreme. The gap between what CEOs are paid and what workers are paid, the alienation from our wealth, from the work that we do, we get less and less a percentage. It is harder to buy a house now than it ever was before. Everything that Marx said is genuinely is observable. Right, we now are making less money than we did before. Like so many people make less money than they did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. When you adjust for inflation, you're actually making less money. Inflation increased by 7%, but your wages increased by 3%. Congratulations, you're making less. You're not being able to afford the things that your parents would have been able to afford, and so on. We're the first generation to be worse off than the generation before us. So it's not extreme. It's not an extreme. I'm not an extremist when I say real estate agents need to fuck off. I'm not an extremist when I say we got to ban them. I'm not an extremist when I say I want more of the value of the products that I earn. I'm not an extremist if I say I want universal healthcare and healthcare for all. I'm not an extremist if I say genocide is bad. If I say, I think that the International Criminal Court has made a decision that is worthy of discussion. That I'm not an extremist if I say, hey, I believe the scientists that global warming is the worst thing that has ever happened and is an existential threat to our entire civilization. These aren't extreme opinions. These are opinions based on factual and evidence, information. They're based on They're based on I'm not an extremist. I'm just upset. And the people that try and pass me off as an extremist, just like the Nazis, just like the I'm waiting for the sound to finish and then I can start it again. The political compass is a tool of oppression. There's no extreme opinions. There's just opinions that are correct, opinions that have validity, and opinions that have no validity. If you're a Nazi, that's not valid. It's not valid. It's not based on anything. If you voted for Trump, if you're an American, you voted for Trump, that's not based on anything. That's based on lies and misinformation and a lack of evidence. If you believe global warming is not happening, then you are factually incorrect. And it's not a considered and rational position to take to say, well, people who believe that Bill Gates has caused 5G to create a mind virus are equally as valid as people who believe that wealth inequality is bigger than it was before. It's not rational to say, you want to eat a pizza? You want to eat shards of glass and anthrax? Well, why don't we have a pizza sprinkled with shards of glass and anthrax? That's not a rational thing to say. It's not a rational thing to say that people who can suck their own dicks are better than people who can't suck their own dicks. Because some people have a microchode. And it's not fair. It's not fair that people who have microchodes can't have a self-suck the same as anyone else. I'm not an extremist. I'm just upset. Thank you.
The Greg Larson Show. The big unit is ready to go. The Greg Larson Show. Muck around on the Mazapan. A fresh custard in his hand. The greatest podcast in all the land. Greg Larson Show. Yeah. Great, just what we need, another podcast show.